Hello, fans, collectors, and investors. Welcome back to Iconic Baseball. I'm Iconic Al. And if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you know that I don't do a lot of spur-of-the-moment, impromptu pickup videos. However, in this case, I was compelled to do so because I'm a physical therapist, and a patient of mine gifted me an item this past week that is very special. And first of all, I wanted to thank my patient. You know who you are. I'm not going to call anybody out here, but thank you so much for this item. It gave me chills. It gives me goosebumps to look at, and it is one of the most amazing things that I've been given as a baseball fan. Let me tell you what this is. This is a 1947 program and scorecard from a series at Wrigley Field. And any baseball fan that's been following the game for a while knows that 1947 was a special year. It was the year that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. And this was a scorecard from what I believe to be the first appearance of Jackie Robinson at Wrigley Field. This is in May of 1947. So here's a quick preview of the program. This is a 1947 program from Wrigley Field, date 1947. Some great advertising throughout this program. And the scorecard shows the Brooklyn Dodgers as the visiting ball club. And I'm going to get a close-up of this to you guys as we go. But you see, of the players listed on the rosters, 42 Jackie Robinson. Now, this is special. The scorecard wasn't scored or filled out. However, we have the first appearance of Jackie Robinson on a scorecard in 1947 as they were the visiting ball club at Wrigley Field. And to see Jackie Robinson's name next to the number 42 on this scorecard from his rookie year, it just gives me chills. It gives me goosebumps. This is what it's all about, in my opinion, as a baseball fan, as a historian, as a steward of important items from this game. And so this is why I made this video, because I felt like I needed to share it. I feel like people want to see this. And so without any further ado, stay tuned, and I'll take you page by page through this thing, because it is special.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Now here it is, what I believe to be the scorecard and program from the first appearance of Jackie Robinson at Wrigley Field. Now, my patient told me that her dad saved this for posterity. Clearly purchased this item because it was important, and it was from an important event. And as I dug more and more and more into the history around this game, it became apparent to me that that would make sense. Because when this happened, it was a big deal, still is a big deal, but back in 1947, in Wrigley Field on the north side of Chicago, this was a really big deal. And so this, I believe, still is a paid attendance record at Wrigley Field, this ball game, May 18th, 1947. So it would make sense that anybody that was there, anybody that was present, that was able to go to that game, was going to buy any souvenir that they could get their hands on. And maybe, in this case, a scorecard that they wouldn't want to put any marks in. In this case, there was an unscored scorecard from this game, and I would have to assume that the reason that anyone would go and buy a scorecard without any plans of scoring the game presumably would be if they thought that scorecard would be important to keep for posterity. And so for me, that makes sense. This is an important game, an important event that someone purchased a souvenir for that they didn't want to write in. So there's a great article around this series, around this game, written by a guy named Corey Ritterbush for the Saber Analytics website. And so I'm just going to read a little bit from this article that he wrote about this game. Jackie Robinson and the Brooklyn Dodgers came to Chicago's Wrigley Field in mid-May of 1947 amid a grand experiment that changed professional sports, opening the gates to a stream of talented black athletes and advancing the cause of racial justice. The experiment proved an emotional stress test for Robinson, the Dodgers team, and the National League. The result changed the fabric of America. The pressure that Robinson endured during his early seasons is well documented, but there were glimpses of hope in the unity and progress that Robinson represented, such as what happened on May 18th in Chicago, the heart of America. Chicago was distinct among National League cities in its cooperation with baseball's integration. Several attendees of Robinson's Wrigley Field debut later used their influential careers to commemorate Robinson. Their memories provide vignettes of the game. Robinson's Major League debut had occurred over a month earlier on April 15th at the Dodgers' home, Ebbets Field. The trials Robinson faced early on set the tone for what he endured for the remainder of the 1947 season. On April 22nd, Phillies manager Ben Chapman verbally unloaded on Robinson in a well-publicized racial bashing. The backlash to Chapman's epithets later led him to seek a photo op with Robinson for damage control. In May, the team's grand experiment in integration went on the road as Robinson played outside New York City for the first time. The Dodgers faced Chapman and the Phillies again in Philadelphia, visited baseball's southernmost city of Cincinnati, then played Pittsburgh, and finally in St. Louis, where Robinson was not allowed to sleep at the same hotel as his teammates, and the Cardinals threatened to strike if he played. After playing in front of 27,000 at Cincinnati's Crosley Field, 34,000 at Pittsburgh's Forbes Field, and the Dodgers arrived in Chicago with Robinson riding a 14-game hitting streak. Chicago was in third place with a record of 14-11, with the Dodgers at 13-12 and fifth place in the early season standings. Chicago was the home to hundreds of thousands of black people who moved north during the Great Migration, seeking economic opportunity and an escape from the segregated confines of the South. Chicago was once a hotbed of black baseball, the home of Rube Foster, who had founded the Negro National League in 1920. In 1900, 30,000 black residents called Chicago home. By 1945, that number had grown to 350,000. Settling mostly on the south side for its numerous factory jobs and redlined from other neighborhoods, Chicago's black population was unified by the Chicago Defender, a highly influential African-American newspaper that enjoyed national popularity due to talented writers and a robust distribution system. The blacks and whites rarely mixed in Chicago in 1947, certainly not on the north side, near Wrigley Field. As the city prepared for Robinson's arrival, Fay Young, writing for the Defender, urged black community members to be on their best behavior as they were being tested as much as Robinson. Quote, "The telephone booths are not men's washrooms. The sun and liquor, even if you drink it before you head north, won't mix," he warned. Quote, "The Negro fans can do more to get Jackie Robinson out of the major leagues than all the disgruntled players alive," end quote. When the Cubs squared off with the Dodgers, Chicago's black baseball fans came in droves. They came by bus, train, and car. Wrigley Field set paid attendance records with 46,572 people, with upward of 20,000 unable to get into the ballpark. Buses dropped off Wrigley-bound passengers blocks away due to congestion around the ballpark. Dressed in their Sunday best, they showed adoration and support for Robinson and cheered him for striking out in his first at-bat. In attendance were spectators who would later be influential in honoring Robinson's legacy. 12-year-old Alan Bud Selig, future commissioner of baseball, took the train from Milwaukee, along with a neighborhood pal. Future U.S. Senator Herb Kohl. 14-year-old attendee Mike Royko later blossomed into a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist. Writing for the Chicago Sun-Times on the day Robinson died in 1972, Royko reflected, "By noon, Wrigley Field was almost filled. The crowd outside spilled off of the sidewalk into the streets. Scalpers were asking top dollar for box seats and getting it. I had never seen anything like it, not just the size, although it was a new record more than 47,000. But this was 25 years ago. and in 1947, few blacks were seen in the loop, much less up on the white north side at a Cubs game. The whites tried to look as if nothing unusual was happening, while the blacks tried to look casual and dignified, so everyone looked slightly ill at ease. For most, it was probably the first time they had been that close to each other in such great numbers. Robinson swung at the first pitch, and they erupted, as if he had knocked it over the wall, but it was only a high foul that dropped into the box seats. I remember thinking it was strange that a foul could make that many people happy. On the Sunday that Royko, Selig, Cole, Pritikin, and so many more watched Robinson break baseball's color barrier in Chicago, there were no death threats, as in Cincinnati. No possibility of player strikes, as in St. Louis. No phony publicity photos, as in Philadelphia. Chicago acted with class. History has focused on the stressors absorbed by Robinson and the grit required to integrate baseball. But the grace of Chicago's black community at Wrigley Field and the respect returned by Cubs fans has gone mostly unrecognized. Today, the single game paid attendance record through more than a century of baseball at Wrigley Field is its enduring testament. And that brings us to this program. Okay, I'm going to do my best to show this program page by page. Let's first appreciate the artwork here. Classic 1947 artwork on the front cover. This is a 10-cent program scorecard that was sold, presumably May 18th, 19th, at Wrigley Field to accompany the first visit of the season by the Brooklyn Dodgers. So let's open this up. The first thing we have is Oscar Mayer wieners. At every sports event, the favorite of the fans, the champion sandwich wiener on a bun. Oscar Mayer wieners. And we have a little piece about how to keep score, learn to keep score. Then we have the best insurance money can buy, Youngberg Carlson. Here we have Look It, your favorite ice cream on a stick. That kind of dates it. No one really says Look It anymore. Chocolate coated ice cream by Borden's, sold in the park. Enjoy one now. Oh, of course, and then Camels, my favorite smoke. They suit me to a T. Choice tobaccos. And then here we have a little history on the flags of Wrigley Field, Chicago, St. Louis, all the teams in their division, the iconic W and L. I think they got rid of the L flag. I don't remember that, but they definitely still use that W flag at Wrigley Field. And then they have a little information around the Chicago flag and the Cubs flag here. Here we have a really early rendering of the Chicago L, which is their subway transit system. Still very early in its development. Rapid transit is what they call it, elevated. I used to live in Chicago, so this is pretty cool for me to look at. I rode the L all the time when I lived in Chicago. We have men's style, Eagle clothing. And here we get to the actual scorecard. So we have on top here the Brooklyn scorecard, where you have the uniform numbers from all the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers. And players like Carl Furillo was an outfielder, number 6. And I'll get this in a little closer here. You can see Carl Furillo there, number 6, Hall of Famer. Eddie Stanky, infielder, number 12. And then if we move over here, you run up the roster numbers. The very last number you see on the right, 42, Robinson, infield, just above the manager, Schotten. That's what gives you goosebumps, to see Robinson listed there with 42 next to him, a rookie infielder, a guy that, might become something, might be influential. And then you have uniform numbers from the Cubs. You got some well-known players there. You got Pafko, in the outfield. But no one of the clout to notoriety of a Robinson, looking back on things. But again, you have a lot of great advertising here. Isbell's Restaurant, Baby Ruth, candy, Coca-Cola, great Coca-Cola ad there. But, again, for someone not to score this, to buy a scorecard and not to score it, it just underlines to me maybe that this was a very important piece. That they didn't want to, in their opinion, sully with their own markings, with a pencil or a pen marking. Obviously, I would have preferred to have this filled out and scored, so we knew exactly what game this came from with 100% certainty. And you could, I'd love to see Robinson's name penciled in there. At that time, he was playing first base, but it would have been so cool to see Robinson penciled in, hitting second, playing playing first base, and to see the stat line. But regardless, how cool is this? And then if we keep looking through the program here, we have ticket prices, which is interesting. We have box seats that are going for $1.80, and grandstand seats $1.25, bleachers 60 cents for a ticket. Box seats, children under 10 get in for $1.20. Bleachers for kids 60 cents still, but just gives you an idea of where pricing was back then. And we have coffee, Thomas J. Wells, the winning cup, and Manhattan sparkling beverages. Two of the best drinks in the park. And then finally, a nice little seating chart for Wrigley Field. You can kind of put in your order for tickets. Eagle Baking. My delicious Borden's milk and cream is served exclusively at Wrigley Field. If it's Borden's, it's got to be good. And then this is pretty cool. You have the field directory, ladies' rooms, men's rooms, Chesterfield cigarettes, and then the play-by-play broadcast, Bert Wilson, and then of course, Pabst Blue Ribbon, tops in the Taste League. Gotta love that. All right, well that's a cool little run through of this program. If anybody else has any more specific information on this, I'd love your input on this, because I did the research that I could do on it. I do believe it is from that first series of the Brooklyn Dodgers at Wrigley Field, May 18th and 19th. Duke Snider was notably missing from the roster in this case, and he was on the roster later in the year. So that's one thing that kind of steers me in that direction. But if there's anything else that is a telltale sign that I'm missing, let me know. Again, thanks for joining me. This is a real special piece, and I'm happy to be able to share it. If you are into learning about and collecting the all-time greats, and you are not subscribed to my channel, then I highly recommend doing so. And until next time, everyone, keep collecting and stay iconic.